Good evening. Welcome to the January 22nd, 2026 Infrastructure Oversight Board. Today, we'll have an opportunity for public comments. Members of the public will have a total of 3 minutes to speak and have the option to participate in the meeting via in-person or telephone. For comments via phone, you can call phone number 818-238-3335. Let's start with the first order of the business, flag salute. Let's do the roll call.
Armin Avazian,
Here.
Maria Coronado,
Here.
Dwayne Gilmore,
Present.
Lori Stearns,
Here.
Shane Weber,
Here.
Colin Hoffmeister.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements?
Yes, Chair. Damian Skinner, Public Works Director. I just want to let our viewers know that we have a vacancy on the Infrastructure Oversight Board. And if any of our viewers have any interest in city infrastructure planning using Measure P funds, I encourage you to apply through our city clerk by February 2nd at 5 p.m. Thanks.
Any other announcements from our board members?
Sorry, so I don't know how it's typically done in the past. We have a new member, so I don't know whether we do it in this announcement session for a bit of introduction, or what we normally do.
Yeah, we can do the introduction at this section.
Yeah, we have a new board member who would like to introduce herself to our fellow board members.
Good evening. I'm Lori Stearns, and I'm happy to be here.
Welcome and nice to meet you.
Welcome, definitely.
Any other announcements?
Not so much an announcement, but just wanted to congratulate Damian on your official appointment, and we look forward to working with you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Same here. I want to congratulate. It's a big position, and we are excited to have you as our Director of Public Works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
No public comment at this time.
How about phone calls?
No phone call.
All right. So we skip the board members' response to the public comments. We go to consent calendar. The first item on the consent calendar is approval of the minutes of the IOB meeting held on October 23, 2025. The recommendation is to approve the minutes of the meeting held by IOB on October 2023, 2025. Do we have any comments from board members?
Motion to approve.
Anybody seconds?
A second.
Can we do a roll call?
Maria Coronado,
Yes.
Dwayne Gilmore,
Yes.
Lori Stearns,
Yes.
Shane Weber,
Abstain.
Colin Hoffmeister,
Yes.
Armin Avazian.
Yes.
Motion passes with 5 yeses and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is reports to the board, item G. Number 1, nomination of new chair and vice chair.
So this is Li Fan, the Chief Assistant Public Works Director. The former chair, Linda Besson, resigned due to her relocation. So her contribution to this board is greatly missed, and also for all her services. But because of her relocation, that automatically disqualify her. So that's why she resigned. But that brings us to the logistic, issue that we need to resolve. So currently, Armin is acting as the chair from the vice chair position. So it's the board can decide whether want to do the election now or postpone it to the end of the meeting, or depends on who is elected on as the chair. There's a potential could be a vice chair vacancy as well. So whether we're gonna do both elections at the same day potentially, or postpone it until we fill all the vacancy. I let the attorney give us the full menu of options.
Yeah, so our recommendation is to either proceed with the nomination as the first report to the board, or, and do the financial report second, or vice versa, the financial report first, and then do the nomination afterwards. So it's up to the board to make that determination.
Either or is fine. I think we can go as the order of the business it's listed. Okay.
And may I ask, are we nominating a new chair and vice chair, or does the vice chair automatically assume?
We can nominate the chair first and then vote. The IOB can vote on the chair, and then we can proceed to the vice chair, depending on how the board proceeds.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if he'll accept the nomination, but I would like to ask Armin Avazian if he'd like to move into the chair position, nominate him for the chair position.
Are there any recommendations or people who want to volunteer for the board chair position? Anybody is volunteered or recommended for any of our fellow board members for vice chair position?
I would be honored to be nominated as the vice chair. However, I am aware that I'm one of the more junior members of the board, so I'll leave it at that, yeah.
Well, when this board began, I was nominated as the chair, and I had never been the chair, right? So jumping into the vice chair position is the only time you would have anything to do is then if the chair was absent, you would take the meeting. So I would nominate you if you accept the nomination.
I'd be honored to, accept that nomination.
Any other recommendations?
I second Armin, and I'm blanking. Twain, sorry.
I'm honored for the recommendation. I'll accept if there are no other recommendations or nobody's volunteering.
If we could vote on the chair first, and then we can vote on the vice chair.
So we do a roll call to select Armin Avazian as the board chair, correct? Roll call.
Maria Coronado,
Yes.
Dwayne Gilmore,
Yes.
Lori Stearns,
Yes.
Shane Weber,
Yes.
Colin Hoffmeister,
Yes.
Armin Avazian.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
So now we do a motion to select Mr. Colin Hoffmeister for vice chair position of the IOB, correct?
Oh, Mr. Dwayne Gilmore.
Dwayne, sorry,
as,
Dwayne
vice chair.
Gilmore. Mr. Dwayne Gilmore for the vice chair position of the IOB.
Maria Coronado,
Yes.
Dwayne Gilmore,
Yes.
Lori Stearns,
Yes.
Shane Weber,
Yes.
Colin Hoffmeister,
Yes.
Armin Avazian.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Congratulations, both of you.
So we go for the item number G2, fiscal year 24-25 Infrastructure Fund Financial Report.
Through the chair, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Becker. She's our Financial Services Director, and she'll be presenting the fiscal year 24-25 Municipal Infrastructure Fund Financial Report.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. Is it okay if I do the presentation from here? Would you prefer I be at the podium, or does it matter?
Please be at the podium. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, and good evening and congratulations, Chair Abazian and Vice Chair Gilmore, and members of the IOB. As Mr. Skinner said, I'm Jennifer Becker, the Financial Services Director for the city. I'm here tonight to present to you with a financial report for the Municipal Infrastructure Fund, which we also call Fund 534. This is our primary unrestricted funding source for citywide maintenance and capital projects. This is a great time to review the city's financial position, as our annual audit was just completed last month, and we are now gearing up for the budget development season ahead. For those of you who are new, this is a great opportunity to learn about how the city funds our infrastructure program. So just a brief look at what we'll be reviewing tonight. We'll start with a report of our total revenues and expenses for the infrastructure fund as of the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, and how it compared to our projections. Then we'll take a look at those year-end revenues, including our remaining fund balance, and incorporate this year's budget to give you a projection of what our financial position will be like at the end of the current fiscal year. We'll review our 5-year forecast for both revenues and expenses for the infrastructure fund and talk about some of the economic factors driving those projections. And lastly, we'll put all of that information together to provide you with an outlook for the upcoming fiscal year 26-27 budget and look ahead at the plans for our CIP development process. So let's get started. Some of you may have seen this slide before, but it's important to bring it back every year to remind us all of Burbank's commitment to funding infrastructure that was directed by the voters as part of the passage of Measure P in 2018. The funding policy dictates that the city dedicate 50% of the 3/4 cent transactions and use tax, you'll hear me refer to that as the TUT, approved as part of Measure P, to the infrastructure fund. Additionally, the city dedicates an annual $4.7 million general fund maintenance of effort contribution, ensuring that those TUT revenues did not supplant the city's level of annual capital spending prior to Measure P. Our recently completed financial audit process includes a review of the infrastructure fund and confirmed that the city continued to maintain this financial commitment in the prior fiscal year, just as it has done each year since Measure P was passed. If you'd like to learn more about our audit process or review the city's annual comprehensive financial report, you can view it on the city's website at burbankca.gov/financial services. Now, it's important to note that while our municipal infrastructure fund is a critical portion of the funding for our capital improvement program, or CIP budget, it is certainly not our only source of funding. The citywide budget for fiscal year 25-26 was adopted by the City Council on June 3rd, and it includes the CIP budget as recommended by the IOB. Total general city capital spending planned for this current fiscal year is $31.5 million, with about 44% of that, or $13.9 million, funded by the Municipal Infrastructure Fund. Another 37% of the CIP is funded by a variety of restricted funding sources, such as our many transportation funds, development impact fees, or parks funds. And 16% of this year's CIP is funded by grant funds, which you may already know is my favorite source of funding because it's made up of other people's money. The city has a long-standing policy of trying to identify and use the most restrictive funding first for projects that qualify, in order to preserve the maximum amount of unrestricted funding for projects that otherwise would not have a dedicated funding source. Altogether, there are 12 different sources of funding, in addition to grants, that make up our 25-26 capital improvement program budget. So let's dive into Fund 534, our municipal infrastructure fund, and we'll start with revenues. Fund 534 has three main categories of revenues. First, as you are aware, it receives 50% of that city's TUT, which was approved by Burbank voters during Measure P. While TUT is a tax on sales, this revenue stream works a little bit differently than traditional sales tax, mostly in the way that online sales are treated. So with a traditional sales tax, revenue from online sales gets pooled with the rest of Los Angeles County and distributed to each city based on their proportionate share of traditional sales tax. With our TUT revenues, revenues are based on the delivery address of the item when you order online, since this tax is unique to Burbank. So what does this mean? First, the performance of our TUT revenues won't always track or follow the same economic trends as traditional sales tax, so we need to track it separately in order to make accurate projections. And second, for every dollar spent online by a Burbank resident or business, the TUT revenues stay right here in the city. So the second source for revenue, as I touched on, is that general fund maintenance of effort, which was established by city ordinance in 2018. This $4.7 million annual contribution is based on a 3-year history of general fund infrastructure spending prior to the passage of Measure P. And like I mentioned, it does not, this ensures that we don't supplant our prior infrastructure funding with those TUT revenues. And the last category is interest. Like any city fund, our infrastructure fund earns interest on its cash balance as part of a pool that is invested and monitored by the city treasurer. While the earnings are relatively small, they do account for a growing portion of the fund's overall revenue. Interest earnings will vary based on the size of the Fund 534 fund balance, as well as current interest rates. There are also occasionally some one-time contributions from other funds or year-end accounting adjustments that may appear in this revenue category from time to time. So looking at our revenue performance from the fiscal year 24-25, which officially closed last month. This graph shows our projected revenue of $21.8 million on the left versus our actual revenue of a little over $22.3 million on the right, a difference of about 2.5%. We were fairly conservative with our projections last year, given all the political volatility and things like tariffs and inflation having a variety of different impacts to the economy. TUT receipts increased by about 2% from the prior year, led by slight increases in the building and construction category, as well as restaurants and hotel sales tax. These were offset by declines in both the business and industry category, as well as fuel and service station revenue with crude oil prices on the decline. The general fund continued to maintain its commitment to infrastructure, contributing that $4.7 million as expected, shown in the green area of the chart. And in that little yellow area is our interest earnings, which outperformed projections by over $500,000 due to the current elevated interest rate environment and a larger than expected overall cash balance in the infrastructure fund. Now let's review our original budgeted appropriations and how they compare to our actual expenditures for the 24-25 fiscal year. Out of a total Fund 534 budget of roughly $23.2 million, the city spent approximately $15.6 million. Our maintenance spending, represented by the red area, was $5.9 million, which equates to about 95% of the total maintenance budget of $6.2 million. As for our capital or CIP budget, total expenditures for the fiscal year were just shy of $10 million, compared to an adopted budget of $17 million, as shown in the gold area of the chart. I should note that any capital project not completed at the end of the fiscal year automatically carries over to the next year so that work can continue on all of the city's budgeted capital projects. This year, approximately $35.4 million in CIP dollars were carried over in Fund 534 as part of the budget adoption process. So we've taken a look at our projected revenues coming in and our actual and estimated appropriations or expenses. The last component of the fund I want to touch on is our fund balance. So I like to think about revenues as your monthly income coming into your checking account and appropriations as your monthly or yearly expenses going out. But your checking account is never exactly at $0, as you hopefully always have a little left over after you bring in your income and pay your bills. So a governmental fund balance is kind of like that, but on a much bigger scale. So we finished fiscal year 24-25 with a total Fund 534 fund balance of just over $5.8 million, which then becomes our starting balance for the new 25-26 fiscal year. So for 25-26, which is the current year, we are projecting revenues of about $21.7 million, And offsetting that, we adopted an O&M, or a maintenance budget, of $6.6 million and a capital budget of $13.9 million. This leaves us with a projected fund balance at the end of fiscal year 25-26 of $6.9 million that will be available for future appropriations. I should note that this balance does not include the $10 million that the City Council approved to set aside for the future Central Library and Civic Center project back in September of 2022. So let's look at a broader view of our infrastructure fund, and with a look back at the past few years, as well as a forecast of where we're headed for the next 5 years. The first 3 columns on the left are the completed fiscal years for which we have final results, while the remaining columns with the more muted colors are our projection for the current year and the next 5 years. One thing we can take away from this chart is stability for the most part, which we like here in finance. Revenues have grown slightly from year to year with only small variations from economic factors, and we expect that trend to continue out into the future of our 5-year forecast. Overall, we are assuming modest growth in our TUT revenues of about 3% per year, though we projected a little bit less in the current year due to some of that economic volatility that we have going on at the federal level. That green section of the chart represents the annual $4.7 million maintenance of effort, and we can project that quite easily since that contribution is entirely under the city's control. And the yellow section represents interest earnings, and while still important, accounts for less than 5% of overall Fund 534 revenues. We expect the growth in this category to be tempered a little bit in future years as interest rates are on the decline. Overall, we project just under $21.7 million in total revenue for this year, increasing to about $23.8 million 5 years from now. So why all the talk about revenues? Well, the amount of revenue we project for each of these years dictates the amount we are able to appropriate during the budget cycle. So again, on this chart, those 3 bars to the left represent the last 3 years of actual expenditures for Fund 534, while the more muted colors represent projected future spending. The area in blue represents our operations and maintenance, or O&M budget, which contains items that are non-capital in nature, including things like building and park maintenance, repairs and related supplies, surveys and inspections, tree trimming, and some traffic equipment. The orange area represents the capital projects that were approved by the IOB and the City Council to be included in the Capital Improvement Program budget. While only the dollars for fiscal year 25-26 were actually appropriated, those remaining years out into the future show that amounts that we will need to appropriate to bring all of those projects to fruition, and also represents our annual capital commitments for items like our facilities program. Now, the gray striped area in the top of each of those future years is critical because that represents the available revenue dollars that have yet to be allocated in each of those future fiscal years. This is where the IOB plays a pivotal role in prioritizing how those dollars are utilized in future budgets, with an estimated $13.5 million available next year, growing to about $15 million in year 5. We've made assumptions in this chart about our future budgets, estimating a modest growth in our maintenance budget of about 2% per year, and assuming that the city will continue with its annual capital programming as adopted in this year's CIP. Those numbers, along with our estimated revenues, are all subject to change, of course, but hopefully it gives you a pretty good snapshot of where we are headed over the next 5 years. So speaking of the upcoming budget, let's do a little sneak peek of what the board can expect for the 26-27 CIP development process. We estimate we'll start the year with that $6.9 million fund balance. In addition, we anticipate receiving about $22.2 million in total revenue for 26-27, which assumes an increase in TUT receipts of about 3% over the current year projection. Of those revenues, we assume that our annual maintenance and capital spending plan will take up about $8.9 million in budgeted expenses. This leaves us around $13 million available for one-time CIP projects in fiscal year 26-27, not including the $6.9 million fund balance that we're projecting at the end of this year. We have 2 very high priority projects that we are looking to at least partially fund with some of that revenue in the coming year. This includes the Civic Center and Central Library project and the replacement of McCambridge Pool. But of course, Public Works has many other requests coming in from our city departments for fiscal year 26-27. So we look forward to a robust discussion with the IOB when we present our proposed capital improvement program in the coming months. So as you can see, our infrastructure fund is in a relatively stable place financially, though it's not without its challenges. While we are expecting slow but steady growth in revenues in this current economy, our maintenance and capital needs continue to grow at a much faster pace as the cost of everything from labor to construction materials has been impacted by inflation. That being said, we have over $56 million in infrastructure funding expected to be available over the next 5 years that has not been allocated to future projects. There are some very significant projects on the horizon that will be competing for those and other city resources, including the city's top 5 projects as identified by the executive team, which is our Civic Center and Central Library, the McCambridge Pool replacement, the modernization of George Isay Park, the renovation of Starlight Bowl, and the Olive Avenue Bridge. These are big, exciting projects, and of course, the IOB will have a critical role in the decision-making process for each of them. We'll return to the IOB during the fiscal year 26-27 budget process to solicit feedback and recommendations as to the budgeting and prioritization for all of the city's CIP projects. So this concludes my presentation, and with that, I am happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Becker, for the presentation. It's always good to know we are staying in a stable situation for the fund via 534. With that, I will leave it up to my board members if they have any question or comments.
Director Becker, thank you for always being so thorough with explaining everything related to what's happening around Burbank here. I have a question, and forgive me if it's not directly directed at your responsibilities. It might be Director Skinner or others who have an answer for this. Just back on slide 7, I'm looking at the slide that has $16.9 million of capital projects as the planned number, and then the actual number shakes out to be of the order of 9.7. That's a pretty big difference. What could we attribute that difference to?
My name is, this is Devon, city engineer. So let me probably, can give an answer, because a lot of those expense, they depend on a lot of factor. And for the most part, for projects, the majority of the expense is going to occur during construction. So a lot of those projects takes time from the planning stage to design and construction. And sometimes it could happen all at once. Sometimes it could takes a bit longer to develop. I could see, for example, some of our street projects, once it's in place, in construction, and all of a sudden the expense is you spend 10 million in a quarter. But when you're not in construction, you're only spending a little bit in design. So a lot of those, the actual spending, you can predict it in over a longer period of time, but it's very hard to pinpoint within a shorter period of time. So this could be, we are looking at, relatively low expenditure for the, months that we look at, and over the next 6 months or 12 months, you could see a very big spike if some of the project go into construction. So it all evens out. Once we adopted the budget, it just takes time to actually get into the actual construction.
I just wanted to add to that also. This doesn't factor in amounts that might be encumbered but not yet expended. When we bid out a capital project, street paving project, for example, say it's $1 million, we might have to issue that contract, and we have to encumber, which basically means save those funds for that particular project once we enter into the contract for construction. So we might have $1 million project, and that $1 million is tied up in April, say, when we bid it out, but we've only expended 200,000, and the remaining 800,000 is in the contract, because as the capital project goes on, they only bill us for portions at a time. So you have to have the money up front in order to be able to enter into the contract, but sometimes it's a longer period of time that it takes to actually expend the dollars. And we do carry those over, but very often with capital projects, they cross fiscal years. It's very rare that you have a project that starts in July and finishes by June.
Yeah, I follow the logic. I must say that I am concerned because it's an order of magnitude different, right? It's 50% almost. That's the difference there. I understand the concept of, let's just say 5% of a total project cost is design and the remainder is construction, and a large project straddles 2 or 3 years. But I think we should be planning for that. And the other point I'd like to make on this too is that if we're underspending by 50% on capital projects, does that mean we're going to overspend next year by 50% on capital projects? I know I'm being kind of alarmist here, but I just want to make sure that we have, especially with the review of our budgets coming up in the next couple of months, I just want to make sure that we understand that there's some smoothness in the cash flow for these capital projects, because I'm not sort of casting shade on your respective departments. I'm just saying, with some of the variables that we've seen in recent time, you mentioned tariffs, you mentioned sort of this volatility. I just want to make sure that we're very well organized around how we deploy capital on these important projects. So yeah, thanks for answering that.
So maybe I need to add a little bit, because they are in terms of budget, they are budgeted, and then there's an encumber. And then they're on the side. So a lot of times when a project is approved, it would approve for the funding. So what happened is the amount approved for a project will assign to a project-specific account. So basically, it's adopted, so those dollars are accounted for, and only when we actually finish the project, we will be we know what the remaining balance is. So I certainly understand your point from a cash flow point of view, to make sure we have enough cash at hand. But at the same time, I think there are two different concepts into how to look at it. One is the actual expenditure, and then the other way to look at it is at any given time, what is the unassigned balance amount. So that's different than what's the cash at hand. I don't know if I explained that clearly, Jennifer.
If I can jump in the middle, maybe that's the key here. Is our budget amount is 16.9 million. We spent 9.7. We have commitments of X. I think that
I do just want to point out that anything unspent on a capital project at the end of the year does get carried over into the next year.
Right.
You see that little asterisk which is probably not visible very well on the slide, but the 16.9 million was our starting budget, the adopted budget, but that doesn't include dollars that were carried over from capital projects from the prior year, which then adds to that budget. So if you have a $16 million budget and you've only spent 9.5 of it, or 10 million, the remainder gets carried over into the next year so that we can finish the projects we started. So that prevents the cash flow problem that you were kind of referring to. But it does build up over time, and it is something to take a look at. We do a quarterly review of capital projects to make sure that the progress is moving forward. And those who aren't moving forward, and there might be a couple this year, we would look to sort of reappropriate those dollars to something else if they're not getting completed.
Yeah, just one closing thought, if I may, Director Becker. I would assume that if we look at our expenses within, the city of Burbank, we want to make sure that our revenue roughly correlates to that number, maybe a little bit more. And another reason why I'm picking on this a little is we want to make sure that we're making realistic projections on what our expenditure is going to be. Because either this is a problem of what you described, you found like projects that are getting delivered in future years, or we didn't estimate the number correctly the year before. I'm not asking for an answer to that. Like we just need to collectively make sure that we're covering sort of both elements of it.
Point well taken. So one of the things I want to point out, because we are for public sector, a lot of times for a multi-year project, sometimes we have no choice but to have the money available upfront in order to avoid a multi-year project. So let's say we have a McCambridge pool, we're going to award it for $20 million. We're not going to spend $20 million within a 12-month period, but we may have to have the entire $20 million available upfront to encumber that, and then we'll spend it over time. So, there may not be an option to only adopt a portion of the budget that we can spend in the next 12 months. So that's a lot of logistics that we have to figure out and per regulation.
A follow-up question regarding the same topic. Are the funds that are tied to contracts or appropriated or encumbered eligible to earn interest?
Actually, yes. So as long as it hasn't gone out the door and it's still held within the city's cash pool, we're earning interest on that while those funds are in our possession, which is why you would never want to, prepay or pay something ahead of time, besides the fact that, you pay your bills when the work gets done. Also, as you're holding on to that money, it does earn interest.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions? I have a couple of questions and clarification asking for. In the report, there is, in the first background section says the unaudited year-end cash balance for the Fund 534. But then at the end, we see that the ACFR is posted and audited. Can you clarify which part of these numbers that's presented are audited and if there are any unaudited section?
That's a good catch. It's actually all audited. When I started the report, the audit was not completed, but as of now, it is completed. So I should have updated the unaudited phrase. Normally, we do this report a little bit earlier in the year, but this year we actually waited until the audit closed. So all the numbers that you're looking at can be considered final this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for catching that.
And then I was going over the ACFR for page 108, the municipal infrastructure total liabilities and fund balance for $55.5 million. Can you clarify what is this fund balance in kind of layman's terms for everybody to understand where is this money coming from?
Well, total liabilities or fund balance?
It's the capital project funds, municipal infrastructure, and the total liabilities and fund balances. It says 55 million, it's 55.562,000.
So that is everything that is currently appropriated for a project. So you know how we discussed we have this year's budget, but then we also have dollars from prior years that get carried over to complete prior year capital projects. That's basically everything that is either appropriated to a project, like the CIP projects and the carryovers, or assigned to a specific purpose, like the $10 million that we have set aside for the central library. So anything that has some sort of assignment is considered a liability, and it's in that category. So the available fund balance, the 6.9 that I was, or actually 5.8 at the end of last year, is everything that is not assigned to a particular project. So it's basically spendable balance is how we like to phrase it.
So that $5.6 million you said?
5.8.
$5.8 million
Yeah.
is our available money for anything that we have as our wish list.
That's
And
right.
this $55 million is basically all of the projects or anything
Mm-hmm.
that's already accounted for, but we have planned for spending on them.
That's right.
For the next few
Appropriated,
years.
encumbered, in a PO, in a project, anything like that. It's a liability, right? Because when you encumber dollars and enter into a contract, that says that you owe that money to somebody. So that's why it gets categorized in the liability. Governmental accounting is not the easiest thing to explain, but that's sort of how those dollars get categorized. And then to get to your truly spendable fund balance, you have to back out everything that you owe, everything that is owed to you, and then just the bottom line of how much cash you have left when all of those items are calculated. Makes finance super fun.
Yeah, one more last question. The $22.4 million estimate for the Fund 534 revenues, does that include the $4.7 million MOE transfer?
Yes, it does.
So that's not on top of this 22.74?
No, that's everything combined.
Thank you. I don't have any other question. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
We go to the next item for discussions. Are there any, it says none, but are there any new discussion items from boards or staff? We'll go to introduction of additional agenda items. Are there any new additional items being proposed? None?
So, one thing, if none from the board, I just want to, say, I don't know how soon we can have the CIP project for next fiscal year on this board. It could be either in February or March. We're still working through it because this particular year is when some of the really big projects started. So it may take a bit longer to sort out the logistic on our end before we can, present it to the board. So just I want to, those are coming. I just don't, at this point, I'm not sure it's going to be either February or March, but it will be one of the two.
Thank you. Future agenda items, any additional items to be discussed? So we go for item J, adjournment. The next scheduled meeting is on February 26, 2026, 6 p.m., room 104 in the Community Service Building. Do we have to make a motion to adjourn? All right. Okay, so the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.